Hi, Tom from buildcoaching.co.uk, and in this video I'm going to discuss the maximum amount of fat loss that you can lose per week if you want to preserve muscle mass, as in without losing muscle mass. So it's winter at the moment when I'm filming this, hence why I've got this nice warm hoodie on. And most people in winter generally tend to do a little bit of a bulking session because, let's face it, you can't really get your abs out in winter, can you? It's not really that sort of weather for it. So a lot of people who are interested in building muscle are trying to sort of bulk a little bit, maybe eating a little bit more. And obviously, because you've got Christmas and stuff like that, people generally tend to put on a little bit of fat over Christmas. But when January, February comes, then the mindset shifts to potentially getting into shape for the spring and the summer. And then we start thinking about, well, I don't want to lose the muscle that I've gained during my sort of bulking or growing season. So how much fat loss can we actually lose? How much calories do we need to drop? How much weight can we actually lose without dropping muscle mass? And so it's not really a right or wrong answer to this. I mean, well, okay, so the wrong answer would be just don't eat anything and lose loads of fat and also lose loads of muscle in the process. So yeah, don't do that. But most people aren't going to do that. But the other side of things, you want to make the process enjoyable as much as you can. A lot of people look at diets as in, diet is like the horrible thing to do when you want to get in shape, and growing is the good thing to do because you're eating more food and you're happy. I try to think about it more in the terms of people want to enjoy the process of looking better, getting into shape. Because my mentality on that is, if you do enjoy the process of getting into shape and looking better and feeling confident, and you're actually happy in that situation, you're going to be more likely to stay there once you've actually got there. And I know people do sort of go up and down in terms of weight through the year. But when I work with clients, what I'm trying to do is get into a position where they're in reasonably good shape all year round. And then when it comes to, say, a holiday or a photo shoot or something else that they've got to get ready for, it's a very easy process just to restrict a little bit of calories back, a bit more cardio, a bit more output in terms of training and stuff to sort of facilitate that extra bit of shreds that we want. Now, let's be clear about what I'm talking about in this video. We're not talking about the contest dieting, Shredsville diet here. That's another thing. That's something I don't do with clients anymore. Something I used to do myself. I used to coach clients on contest prep. And a lot of people say, I want to be shredded. I want to be, six-pack abs and all this sort of stuff. And actually, a lot of people, their definition of shredded is not the definition of shredded that I would use. Shredded for me is when you get up in the morning, everything is tight. You can see your lower back, you can see the glute striations, you can see the feathering in your quads. That for me is shredded, and that requires a level of discipline and hardship. And no matter how much you sugarcoat it, that is hard and not a nice place to be in. So we're not talking about that level of extreme dieting. What we are talking about is getting into a reasonable shape, so you have a nice flat stomach, you have a good tone, good muscle tone, good shape, so people can see that you work out, that you are in reasonably good condition, but it's not too extreme. It's not something that they're going to go, that's a little bit too shreds for me. So that's what we're talking about here, is how can we get into a position where we've got low levels of body fat, but a healthy low level of body fat, where we actually got a good bit of muscle as well. So here's my thoughts or take homes for that, the sort of key points you want to think about. And I've touched on it already. Firstly, you want to enjoy the process. So going for like really high calorie deficits, I wouldn't do that. And there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, if you are eating a load of food that you enjoy and you're really happy and everything else, as soon as you restrict that back to a reasonable degree, you're going to get some kickback from the body. If you do it a lot, if you go a high calorie deficit, so you're talking about, let's say 700, 800, 900 calorie deficit, depending on how much you can go to, you'll get results really fast there. You'll lose body weight really fast. You'll also lose body fat as well, and you'll also potentially lose a little bit of muscle, because the amount of calories that you're restricting yourself is now you're not giving yourself enough calories in order to build and maintain muscle. So there's the first issue. So, and with that, comes a level of tiredness, fatigue, lack of motivation, because the body kicks back against you. As soon as you start really restricting your calories, it tolerates that for a little while, because some fluctuations are common, in terms of everyday life. But after you've restricted for a massive amount of time, the body's going to say, oh, hold on, if this happens, if this keeps happening, we're going to waste away to nothing. So we've got to start putting some defense mechanisms in place. And I'm talking about starvation mode. That's a bit of a, it sort of is, but it isn't a thing that happens. But what the body does do is recognize that calories are in a massive amount of restriction. You're probably putting a demand on the body in terms of, you've probably upped your cardio, and you're probably trying to do a little bit more in terms of activity. So candle is burning at one end, and also it's burning at the other end. So what you're finding is the body's saying, well, actually, we're in a real situation here where we've got demands of energy which we can't handle, and the food coming in can't fuel or sustain that. So what it does, it starts to do something called compensation, whereby it restricts your let's say your movement, your what we call NEAT activity, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is basically the stuff that you do when you're not in the gym. So it makes you more lazy, more tired, more demotivated to actually get up and do stuff. And that is an attempt to sort of compensate the outside of things, the things that you're trying to do in the gym. So what you'll find is, you might get a decent gym workout in, but actually when you get home, you have no energy to do anything. You've got no energy for work, no energy for anything really outside of the gym. So that would be the first sort of signal that potentially a calorie deficit is too high. And the calorie deficit, remember, comes from food in and also activity out. So if you are trying to put a higher demand on your body, actually what I find when I'm working with clients is that if we're going for this sort of higher output, more training and more volume to get the body burning more calories up, often after the initial fat loss phase for about 2 or 3 weeks, we actually need to then increase carbohydrate, because the body becomes more efficient at doing those things. And to continue doing that level of activity and continue making progress, we actually have to fuel it a bit more with more complex carbohydrates. So what we find is, as we're increasing the demands on the body, which is creating a calorie deficit, of course, what we're then doing is increasing the calories in. So that might sound counterproductive. But why would you do that? Why would you give more calories if you're trying to burn calories up? And the reason is, like I just explained, the body will recognize that this increased demand is happening, and as a defense mechanism, it will rein back, or try to rein back as many calories out as possible. So what we want to do is say to the body, yeah, we're placing a higher demand of work on you. We want you to be a more efficient machine, a leaner machine. But what we're also going to do, we're going to put the right fuel in to facilitate that. So the body has the energy it needs to do the work, but also it's confident the energy coming in is sufficient to sustain this fat loss demand that you're also putting on it, this calorie deficit you're also putting on it. So it becomes quite comfortable. And I've had clients who've have gone up to say 700-800 calories, 700 grams of carbs a day, and have still lost body fat because they are pushing out massive amounts of work in the gym and in their daily lives and in their work and stuff like that. So don't be afraid if you're finding that you're getting all these great results and you're then thinking, well, actually, I'm really tired and enough. Don't be afraid of putting carbs up a little bit, because that will help you. So first thing, you've got to enjoy the process and have the energy to be able to do it. The second thing is, whatever you do in terms of fat loss dieting, make sure your protein is high. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Is that when we're trying to gain muscle, we're trying to build muscle, we need more protein. But also protein does help in terms of preserving muscle mass if you are in a deficit. So, and also protein helps with keeping your muscle mass keeping your appetite, I should say, low. So what we generally tend to find is people in high protein diets generally tend to tolerate dieting a lot better, because they have this sense of full, they're feeling full for longer during the day. So when I'm looking at a diet phase for someone, I'm normally typically want to be putting about 1.6 grams per kilo of protein in. So if you're a 100 kilo person, that's 160 grams of protein. And I generally have that as a sort of a minimum requirement. Now it does depend, obviously, if I'm working with females who are very small and very petite and haven't got a lot of calories to play with, we probably drop down to 1.4, but I wouldn't really go below that, because what we're trying to do, and remember, the people I work with are looking to build muscle. They're training in the gym. They're not people who don't exercise and they're sedentary. They're looking to get a really good body and be lean at the same time. So we want to keep that protein high to facilitate both muscle growth, muscle repair, and also help them keep full and offset that hunger a little bit. The other side of that is that when you're putting high demand on the body and you're losing a bit of body fat, there's potentially a higher risk of contracting some cold stuff and colds, flu, that sort of thing, because you're running at this higher output. So the higher protein amount helps to make sure your immune system has all the proteins it needs to build the relevant T cells and fight infection, that sort of thing. So it's a good idea to have your protein quite high. With guys who have got a lot more body mass and a lot more weight, we can go higher on the protein. But remember, all this has got to fit into your calorie deficit that you've created for yourself. And sometimes what we do is interchange carbohydrates and protein. So say, for example, if we are, say, 2 grams per kilo on protein, and we're finding we need a little bit more carbs to get the workouts done, what we can do is take a little bit away from the protein and give it towards the carbs and still maintain that optimum protein amount. And that way we can actually not change the calories at all, but change the demographic of the macros so that we can put more energy, more readily available energy, I should say, into workouts. So in terms of, let's say, how much fat can you lose in the week, if you put all these things in place, such as a tolerated calorie deficit, something the body's happy with, you've got the macro split for that, and you're comfortable with that, I would say the max amount of fat loss per week, and it's difficult to say fat loss because you're looking at the scales here. Normally what I'd be looking at with people is when we get them on the scales, look at the photos, everything else, about, I would say, 1 kilo to 2 kilos a week is about a safe zone. And obviously we're talking body weight here, not talking fat loss. It's very difficult to measure the amount of fat loss per week, because if you are training with weights, you're going to be building a little bit of muscle, especially if your protein is at the right amount, and you might be building muscle and losing fat at the same time. And I've seen this loads of times with the people I work with. I've had a guy this week I'm working with, been working for 8 weeks. He's dropped only 2 kilos, but if you look at the photos, his body has a complete change. He's obviously lost more than 2 kilos of body fat, but because he's gained muscle at the same time, he now looks, much different. But if you looked at you think, oh, just 2 kilos in 8 weeks, that's not a lot. Yeah, but look at the pictures and you can see it's changed. So that brings me on to my next thing: is don't be too concerned with your body weight, because, like I said, I've had clients who have dropped minimal amounts of actual weight on the scales, but when you look at their photos, there's a massive change. I've even had guys, and this is one guy I work with, there's a testimonial on my website you can see from Andrew, and he actually gained weight, but lost loads of body fat. He gained muscle, lost loads of body fat, and looked a lot leaner and a lot bigger. And that was eating like 700 grams of carbs a day. So he was, obviously that's an outlier. So don't be expecting that's going to happen to you, or anybody as a common thing. But his job was very active. He was very active in his gym work. He was a really active guy, and he was really quite lean when we started. But that's just an example where the scales are not the thing you want to be relying on. So when you're looking at, how much weight can I lose per week? Yeah, it's subjective. Look at the pictures, look at your clothing, look at how you look in the mirror before you then think, the scales, that's the only determinant of success. In terms of not losing muscle mass, I would say it's very difficult for you to lose a serious or significant amount of muscle mass if you have actually kept your protein high, kept your calorie deficit moderate, kept up training with weights, and I would probably go for volume rather than strength training. It's very unlikely you're going to lose a lot of muscle mass when you're dieting. People always say, I've lost loads of muscle mass, but they haven't. They were just really fat when they started, and they look big in a t-shirt, or they look big in the gym. They liked how they looked, but actually when the fat comes off, because it's then going away from around the muscles and everything else, what they actually think is, I've lost muscle mass. No, they haven't. They've actually just lost a load of fat. And people will measure, I've lost muscle mass, because they are getting potentially weaker in the gym. That again is potentially misleading. You'll get weaker as you lose body mass, because mass moves mass. So if you are a bigger guy, you can actually apply more of your body weight into the lift to get that, especially things like deadlifts, squats, that sort of thing. You have more power to pull with or push with, so potentially you're stronger. So I wouldn't, if you're essentially losing, let's say your 1 rep max is going down, that wouldn't be an indicator for me that you're losing muscle mass. again, you need to look at the photos, you need to look at the stats, all these things to gauge that. You probably will get weaker in terms of, yes, your 1 rep max, not from losing muscle mass, but the fact that you've got less calorie availability, you've got less mass or body mass to push with. In terms of muscle mass, look in the mirror, look how big you look, because you can drop a significant amount of body fat and look a lot bigger. And you say, well, I've gained muscle on a diet, and actually you haven't. What's happened is the fat's come off, and you've and you look bigger because the cuts are there. So it's very subjective in terms of this. So I would say that as long as your calories are in, let's say, a 300 to 500 calorie deficit, let's go for that as a sort of gauge point. If you're eating between 1.6 and 2 grams per kilo of protein per kilo of body weight, that's unlikely to lose the muscle mass there. If you are doing mainly volume training, so in terms of your weights, don't go for strength based stuff, don't go for 5x5, that sort of thing. That's something when you're trying to gain size, and you're going to be disappointed if you do that when you're trying to lose muscle mass. So go for more volume training. If you want an example of this, go to my website, buildcoaching.co.uk/vitamin T, or go to my vitamin T group on Facebook, and there's some free workouts there you can try to sort of see the sort of level of volume I'm talking about. And also do a moderate amount of cardio. A lot of people do like an hour of cardio at a time. That's too much. Unless you're contest dieting, that's too much. I would say that 25 to 40 minutes cardio maximum per day is where you would need to be. I've done loads of videos on cardio before about what's the best and what's the worst type of cardio to do for fat loss. So go and have a look on my channel for those if you want some more detail on that. Okay, I think that's everything covered. Yeah, I think I've done a pretty good, hopefully comprehensive job there. If you found this helpful, then please do share it around, give it a like. If you are not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, and you'll get more of these types of videos. And if you want some sort of free stuff to help you along your way, on my website, buildcoaching.co.uk, there are calorie calculators, there are pre-workouts and other stuff to get you started and help you get those sort of first couple of kilos off. And of course, if you want some further help, feel free, drop me a message and we'll talk about if I can help you in any way. I would be pleased to have that conversation. Thanks for watching, as ever. Thanks for your attention. Appreciate the time, and I will see you on the next video. Bye for now.